When was the last time that you have taken an honest, authentic look at yourself, at who you are, and ask yourself, why is my life the way it is? So what I mean by this is we oftentimes get caught up in our life, in the happenings, in the circumstances of our life, of our existence. And there's no shame in that. And it's very easy to get caught up in life, in what is happening to you. But when we forget about self and get too caught up in what is going on out there, outside of ourselves, then we lose touch with who we are. And if you've seen any of my other stuff on here or are just familiar with philosophy, spirituality in general, you probably have some degree of understanding that the life that you see outside of you, the physical world that surrounds you, is just an expression and a reflection of your internal state of awareness, of being, and of consciousness. So when things in your life are happening, we often get caught up in the understanding that these things are happening to us, or against us, or for us. But in reality, everything outside of us is neutral. It exists. And we internally decide what this means for me versus what this means for me. So we're the ones that make the decision of what something means for us in our life. And we often forget that the person that we are, the identity that we exist as, is what is reflected outside of us. So again, I will say, when was the last time you have taken an honest look at yourself and who you are being, the state of consciousness, the awareness that you are embodying? And it's all right if it's been a while. It's all right if you do it every day. And it really doesn't matter how often you do it or how infrequently you do it. What matters is that you are aware that who you are internally, who you are being, is what will be reflected back to you. And when we take the time to go inwards and to look at ourselves, to study ourselves, to truly be accountable for who we are being, for who we are, that is when we can come to terms with and accept our life, everything that is going on within our life, because we see that our life is just a byproduct of us. And we are the ones that are determining if it is happening in our favor or not. If everything in our life is amazing or horrible. And of course, there will be different circumstances that are harder to go through or easier to go through. But ultimately, we determine whether or not the tribulations that we go through are for our benefit, and we use them in a way to enlighten ourselves, in the sense that we recognize that this tribulation we have went through is an aspect of ourselves in whatever capacity it is. And there's no need to ever dive deep into the hows and whys and what ifs of any situation, although it can be helpful to. But ultimately, you need to use your own discernment, your own level of understanding, and your own understanding of yourself to recognize what it is that you need to do in order for you to understand why a situation is benefiting you, even if it may look like it isn't benefiting you. And ultimately, everything thus far in my experience, everything in life happens exactly as it is meant to, and exactly as it needs to. It is determined in the sense that the path that we walk on and the events that unfold along our path, the side quests that we go on, the main quests that we go on, the main path that we are taking, it is all in place and unfolding at the exact right moment. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you would know that I have the perspective that all is happening now. There is no past, there is no future, there's only the present moment. And from an intellectual perspective, we can understand this in the sense that when we think about the past, we are recognizing that we are aware of an event that is not happening right now. And when we think about the future, we are recognizing that we are still aware of an event that is not happening right now. And in that case, an event that has not yet occurred linearly in our understanding of time. And what looking at the past or the future does is makes us realize that this moment that we are in right now, and every moment for that matter, every moment that follows this, is the only true moment. Consciousness, awareness, God, whatever you want to call it, exists now. It exists in this moment. And it is never separate from this moment. Just as nothing else is ever separate from this moment, just as nothing in your life is ever separate from you and who you are. So when you sit and look at your life, and whatever your circumstances are in your life, and I'll use myself for an example. In the last year, I was fired from multiple jobs and had a hard time maintaining work as well as making money. And when I sat down and examined why this was the case, I recognized that this was my own doing, in the sense that the state of consciousness, the awareness that I was in that preceded these events was the awareness of before I got fired, of getting fired. I remember having arguments with my supervisor in my head and one of the managers, and dwelling on me being let go of by the company, even though most people who knew me at that job, most of my coworkers, would, if you were to ask them about me as an employee, they would say that I was a very good employee for the company, a very good employee for the team that I was on, and brought a lot of benefit not only to others on my team as well as to the company. But regardless, I was fired regardless of that. And that is because of the state I was in, the person that I was, the identity that I was aware of was I wanted to be someone who was fired. I willed it into existence. That was because I had fallen down a path of forgetting about myself, forgetting about being conscious of my involvement in my reality. And I found that throughout my life, since I first became aware of the fact that life is just reflecting my internal state of being, my identity, since I've become aware of that, throughout my life, I've had periods of not being so aware of it and of forgetting that aspect of life, just getting caught up in the circumstances of life, as I'm sure you probably are well aware of. And there's nothing wrong with getting caught up in these circumstances. But when I recognize that quote unquote bad things occur in my life or unfortunate events happen to me, bad circumstances, and I say this with quotes because the way I see things today is that everything is happening in my favor. And it always has been and it always will be, regardless of how it's perceived. Because I can choose to perceive it and you can choose to perceive it as experiencing and walking through hell or being in heaven. You know, have the concept of hell and heaven metaphysically, spiritually, metaphorically exists now within, in this state, in who you are being in this moment. Anyways, I have recognized that throughout my life at these different periods, I've lacked awareness. And my go-to state that has existed since, I want to say since I was in middle school, that has existed up until recently, is one of victimhood and one of self-sabotaging. And a lot of people experience this because this is a very human thing, a very natural thing to do, to self-sabotage, to look for problems in our life and try to fix these problems. Because as humans, as biological beings, the bodies that we inhabit, we are wired biologically to solve problems. And we're really fucking good at it. We're really good at fixing problems and solving problems in our life. And that's why evolutionarily we have evolved so far and come to this point in humanity to where our civilization has evolved this much. Even if there's aspects of it that are maybe not as good, not quite as evolved as others, but we have gotten to this point to where as species, we have evolved a lot. And a lot of that is because of our problem solving abilities and our capability to analyze our surroundings and recognize if something is not good for us or for the community and fix that, solve that problem. But in today's day and age, we do this, but a lot of people, if you grow up in a first world country, since that's my experience, you don't have as many problems of survival as the brain was built to solve. The brain was built, the body, the brain, this biological organism is built to survive. And when the need to survive, even if you experience it at moments in your life, but when it is largely taken away, then you find problems in other aspects of existence. And that is why people look to whoever they want to online and they're like, oh, like this person's an issue. And that's why people just go online and like hate on others because they have nothing better to do than to find problems with others because they're really fucking good at finding that because our brains are good at doing that. So they're like, oh, this is an issue. I'm going to say what I think about this issue. All right. I mean, I'm doing that to a degree right now. So clearly it's a hardwired thing for us. But the problem with that is when we forget about the spiritual nature of ourself. When we forget about the fact that we are consciousness and everything is consciousness, no matter which way you want to phrase it, however it feels right to you to say it. Awareness, energy, consciousness, whatever. That is what we are at our core. And a good way, or the way that I first, maybe not first, no, the way that I experienced this understanding for one of the first times was through doing a meditation where I repeated the phrase, I am not my mind, I am not my body, on an inhale. I'm not my mind, I'm not my body. And then exhale, I'm not my thoughts, I'm not my emotions. Which is essentially, you don't have to do this, but essentially what this is doing is analyzing identity and the underlying aspects of your identity, which is consciousness. So looking past the ego, the mind, the thoughts, the identity of the body, of who it is that you are in the world, and seeing what exists beyond that. And when you look beyond that and see what exists, you find I am, which is the best way that I describe it. I am, which is everything. You are eternal. And this is what you find when you go beyond yourself, when you go beyond the individual, and you find the whole, the entirety of existence fragmented into you, into your vessel, your physical body. And this experience, when you have an experience like that, then you start to realize how everything outside of you is just mirroring that who you say you are. And I've been going on for quite a while here. Let's see. Okay, I don't have much. I don't got a lot of storage on my phone, so I'm running out of space here. So to wrap this up, essentially, who you say you are, who you are being in any moment, is what you will see outside of yourself in your world. So if there are aspects of your reality that you don't like, first of all, identify or recognize, rather, that they are neutral. Everything is neutral until you prescribe a positive or negative connotation to it. Every event, every circumstance, every person, which is a hard one for a lot of people to recognize, that every person is neutral until you prescribe the notion, the understanding that this is a bad person, or they are bad to you, or this is a good person, they are good to you. Everyone exists neutrally until your awareness says otherwise and accepts otherwise. So everything is neutral, and it is your job to discern, to determine, to decide. Ultimately, this is all we do as humans, as the universal mind, as the consciousness that exists in this body, in this individual aspect. All we do is decide. If you were to make life, if you were to simplify it to the core, everything you do is just a decision. In your life is the unfolding of every single decision you have made. But the decision always starts within. You make the decision internally, and then everything happens from that internal decision, that internal understanding and state of being. You say, I am this. You say, I am, for an example, I am a power lifter. And then you make that decision first. You say that you identify as that first. And then your life goes on, and 1 year later, you'll see that you're benching 315. Probably not. Maybe, depending on your strength and your level of strength when you're starting. But as you go on and continue on, you will see that your reality, your existence, conformed to this identity that you formed within about yourself and about your world. And this happens with every single thing in life. So it's imperative that you are hyper aware of existence, of self, and what you are saying is true about the various aspects of your life. What do you say is true about your finances? What do you say is true about your relationships? What do you say is true about where you live? What do you say is true about the world that you live in on a day-to-day basis? For example, if you commute to work, what do you say is true about getting to work? You get stuck in traffic every day and you say, fuck, I got stuck in traffic again, and you like continue this process happening? Or do you say your drive to work is peaceful, regardless of whether you're in traffic or not? Things to consider. So, who do you say you are? Identity. Who you say you are? And how does your life work? How does your life happen outside of you? And what do you say about your life? All right. Take a look at yourself, honestly, truthfully, and see what's going on within that can be projecting without into your world. And if there's something you don't like outside of yourself, do what you need to do to feel better about it. Take whatever actions you need to. Take the steps you need to feel better. But remember, it is up to you to determine the connotation of anything in your life. You determine everything is neutral. You determine if it is good or bad. All right? Till next time. Peace.